Okay, so this is going to be a quick tutorial on how to use some functions to convert from degrees to radians and then do some sine calculations of those angles in radians. And you'll be using this on the investigation of the Index of Refraction Lab in class. So first thing I'm going to do is label the columns for the data I'm going to collect. So this is the angle of incidence. This is the angle of refraction. And then we're gonna just make up some data for this, but you'll be actually collecting it. So let's say I do angles of 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 degrees. And then the angle of refraction is something like 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25 degrees. Again, it doesn't matter. So when you collect your data, then now we need to convert it to radians. So we're going to do angle, or I guess I should put incidence in radians, and then this would be refraction in radians. Okay. So now we're going to use a function for this, and the way you do this is you start by pressing equals in the cell, and then so now it knows you're going to put a function in, and we can just type in R A D, and you can see it comes up with the function radians. It'll convert an angle value in degrees to radians. So when we select that, now it asks us what cell we want. So we want the angle of incidence here. We recorded it to be 2 degrees. So if we just put in cell A2 and hit enter, so this is 2 degrees converted into radians. And as we've discussed before, you can copy that formula down instead of doing it all by selecting that box, grabbing the corner, and pulling down all the way. And so it does that. If you prefer not to do it like that, you could just go back in and repeat the same procedure, equals radians, and then now it knows A3, so we do it and we get the same number. So whichever you prefer. We then need to do that same thing for the angle of refraction, so equals radians. We want it this time to be cell B2, so we hit enter, and then again we drag down. So now we have 2 columns, the angle of incidence in radians and the angle of refraction in radians. So in order to get the results that we want, we need to take the sine of those values. So we'll label this sine of angle of refraction, or excuse me, incidence. Okay, so the way we do that is, again, it's a function. Sheets will do that as a function. So we equals sine, and then you can see it just comes up. Take the sine of the angle, and again, this is provided only in radians. So sine, we don't want these first 2 columns anymore. That's just how we measured it in degrees. We need to use the radians column. So incidence angle in radians. Hit enter, and there is the sine of that angle of incidence. We'll then drag the cell down, and there are my numbers. Okay, we're going to do the same exact thing over here, except this time this is going to be the sine of the angle of refraction. We'll do equals sine of, and now we want refraction in radians. Oops. Got to do 1 cell at a time. Then we will drag down like that, and there are my numbers. Okay, so now these 2 columns right here are the ones we want to graph. We want to graph the sine of the angle of incidence versus the sine of angle of refraction. When you look at the lab, it will tell you graph the sine of the refracted angle on the x-axis and the sine of the incidence angle on the y-axis. So we will do insert chart, and we need to follow instructions. So on the y-axis, it tells us we want the incidence angles, so that is going to be the sine of the incidence angles, these. Okay, and then on the x-axis, we want sine of the refracted angles. Okay, and we know this needs to be a scatter plot. There they are. We can do the trend line, and you guys should know how to carry on the rest of the things, getting your line of best fit and other things. So I hope that helps. When in doubt, please read the instructions on the handout or rewatch this video on how to use the functions in Goolge Sheets to convert from degrees to radians and then take the sine of those angles that are already in radians.